Hey guys, welcome. So now we're going to go through the story of Samson and Delilah. Judges chapter 16. One day, Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute, and he went in to spend the night with her. And the people of Gaza were told, "Samson is here." So they surrounded the place and laid in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the first night, saying, "At dawn, we'll kill him." But Samson laid there only until the middle of the night, and then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gates, together with the two posts, and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faced Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sok, whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can allure him into showing you the secret of his great strength, and how we can overpower him, so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." Then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. With the men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You have made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied." He said, "If anyone ties me secretly with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them, and then men hidden in the room, and she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the ropes off of his arm as if they were threads. Delilah then said to Samson, "All these things you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." And he replied, If you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become as weak as any other man." So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head and wove them into the fabric and tightened it with the pin. Again she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." And he woke from his sleep and pulled up the pin and the loom with the fabric. Then she said to him, "How can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you have made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your strength, your great strength," with which nagging she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, "Come back once more. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hand. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him, and his strength left him. Then she called, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." And he woke from his sleep and though I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. And then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and took him down to Gaza. Binding him with the bronze shackles, they set him to grinding the grain in the prison. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. The death of Samson. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, saying, "Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands." And when the people saw, they praised their God, saying, "Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, the one who has laid waste our land and multiplied our slain." So while they were in high spirits, they shouted, "Bring out Samson to entertain us." And so they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. And when they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his head, "Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them." And now the temple was crowded with men and women, and all the rulers of the Philistines were there. And on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. And then Samson prayed to the Lord. He said, "Sovereign Lord, remember me, please God. Strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." And then Samson reached towards the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And then he pushed with all his might and came down the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. Then his brothers and his fathers, his whole family, went down to get him. And they brought him back and buried him between Zor and Eshtaol in the tomb of Mahon, his father. And he had led Israel for 20 years. This has a parallel to Jesus Christ. Jesus mentions the very hairs on our head, and that we're worth more to him than many sparrows. We were his weakness. He loves us. Placing him on the cross, he was nailed for our sin, our iniquity. Matthew 27:50-56. But Jesus again cried out aloud, and he breathed his last. And at that moment, the temple curtain was ripped in two, top to bottom, and there was an earthquake, and the rocks were split in pieces. What's more, tombs were opened. More tombs were opened, and many bodies of believers asleep in the graves were raised. After Jesus' resurrection, they left the tomb and entered the holy city and appeared to many. The captain of the guard, and those with him, when they saw the earthquake and everything else that was happening, were sacred to death. They said, "This has to be the Son of God." And there were also quite a few women watching from a distance, women who had followed Jesus from Galilee in order to serve him. Among them was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee the brothers. Jesus' arms were stretched out, and in that moment, when he breathed his last breath, there was a great earthquake, and the temple was split, and the curtain split, pointing towards Christ. We are his weakness. He loves us. There is no greater love than this, that a friend lays down his life for his friends. I hope that you enjoyed this. Hope to see you next time. Peace.